The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this January 22nd, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. And also they play this show at 11 a.m., and that's Pacific time as well. You can also get my show at www.arcticbeacon. Okay, another day in America, another day, I believe, of willful blindness amongst the mainstream, maybe not the questioning part of our society, which is very small. And this show today is going to take a little bit different approach, and I don't know if I can get it all done in an hour, so it may spill over into another show. But I've always said this, that when you really look at this, when I started out as a journalist years ago, I always had more questions than I had answers, and nothing has really changed. And the more you start searching for some kind of truth, whether it be spiritual or political or socially minded, you always come up with so many questions. And today's show is going to deal with communication. And people have asked me, how come people just don't want to listen to what certain people say about what's going on in their government, what's going on at the hierarchy of their religions? Why do they remain willfully blind, in a sense? Why do they shut you off? How many times have you begun a conversation about some of these things? Let's just use the Vatican-led New World Order, and you start teaching or telling people about what Rome is all about, and their eyes begin to get very large, and then they put on their sunglasses so they don't have to really see you anymore, and they kind of turn around and walk away. Well, I think the problem is communication and how we as human beings really do communicate. It's only through words. It's only through newspaper articles. It's through the internet with all its information. It's through laws that we write down. Everything is done in this kind of manner. I think we think far too much. And what I mean by that is, I think we've lost the ability to use our other senses. In fact, if you want to, the reason I want to do this show is because I want to show you that the human species, to me, is very complex, but on the surface, we seem to use technology and all these things to make us superior, in a sense, to all the other species that we share this planet with. And let me preface this by saying, I have no desire to talk about creationism or evolution in this show. And if you have one belief or another, we can do that at another time, but it's too polarizing with a subject like today. And what I mean by that is, we have lost the ability to communicate. Now, when you say, well, look at all the technology, look at how, we go to school, we have vocabularies that are quite large. But I'm not talking about this type of communication. I'm talking about communication of the heart, the senses, the things you feel, the things you emit, and you don't realize that these are the real things that you should listen to. That's why it's easy for people to turn off words. But how many people right now, if I said, that the Vatican worships Lucifer? Or is all roads lead to Rome, and our government has gone way overboard by not understanding, by abusing the Constitution, by doing all of these things that are illegal? People would basically then start looking at all the words, looking at everything, and finding little loopholes and all these things, but deep down in their heart, deep down in their senses, the things we've lost, they know something's wrong, but they do nothing about it. Thus, I say willful blindness. And when you look at the species, when you look at the human being, let's compare it now to the animals that we share our life with. And I think if we look at them a little more closely and don't just look at them as basically we are the custodians, we have to teach them through fear, etc., to be loyal to us. Let's not look at that. Let's look at the communication that we could have with them and maybe the things we could learn from them. And when I say that, I say it without, now you in your mind are going, well, we're smarter, they don't know anything. I don't agree with that at all. And I'm going to use a couple examples today. And first, let me give you some examples of my own. Now, I grew up on a dairy farm in Burlington, Wisconsin, at a time in this country when a man could make a living with 50 cows, 200 acres. The food was better. We didn't use pesticides. We figured out ways to grow the food for our cows. We had gardens. I can remember milk tasted a lot better back then. But as a kid, I grew up every morning side by side with animals. And I somehow created some kind of relationship with them that was not just words. Now, I didn't go after them and try to, I was just a little boy. These cows were more or less, I gave them names. They all had little personalities. And thank God it was a dairy farm, because I don't think I would have existed quite well on a beef farm where the cattle were raised to be killed. I used to go out into the woods. In the back of our farm, there was a place we would throw, it was a dump, and that's where we would throw our things, and then burn our garbage, things like that. And so there was a dump, and most farms have that. Now, I used to go out there myself and used to take my horse and ride out there. And as a kid, sure, I was rambunctious, but I remember one day I tied up my horse and I kind of fell asleep. And the next thing I know, something was nudging my head. And I looked up and it was a little deer. And amazingly, he wasn't frightened at all. And he was spindly, very young, and I had surmised that either his mother was killed, died of natural causes, but he was alone. So I brought back the deer, and of course my grandmother, who was from Poland and everything, started taking care of him. We fed the deer, and the deer stayed with us a number of months, and I had a great relationship with that little animal. I did have a dog, and I remember my dog's name was Moochie, and he was a lab, and he got along with the deer. And amazingly, we would bring the deer into the barn during the milking of our cows in the morning and the night, and the deer seemed to get along quite well with all of us. And there came a time when it grew up, and the deer, I remember walking it out. He always, through the years, I ended up leaving the farm. Occasionally, I thought I would see him. But I learned then that at a young age, maybe because I wasn't that smart myself back then, that I could communicate with that animal, not through words, but I can also sense certain things that he needed. And perhaps he sensed certain things that I needed. Now, it's similar to the fact that if you ever realize, most people, one of my big concerns, I've had dogs most of my life, and I really get upset with people who really think they are just there as pets. No, they become more than that. They become actually something you can communicate with. In fact, they teach you certain things that you don't even realize. For example, you've heard the old story. How does the dog know you're coming home when your car is maybe 3 blocks away? Now, a human being wouldn't know that. Do you ever, and there's another example, do you ever find yourself, if you have an animal, you get up and all of a sudden you think he needs something? For example, grooming. For example, maybe he's got a lump on his side, and all of a sudden you start feeling that, and you start helping him. Well, is it because you're smart enough to understand that, or did he kind of communicate to you without saying anything that he needs something? For example, as simple as getting him water. I can remember one time, and the reason I'm doing this show right now, and I've got some examples. Hopefully I can get this done, and I don't know if I can do it in an hour, so this may spill over to Monday, but I want you to think about it over the weekend. I think the problem we have, even amongst our own species, is we're not communicating the proper way. We're just using words, and those are easy to get around, and that's why people have lost, our species has lost the ability to communicate in many different ways. And I'm going to show you that through 2 examples I'm going to give you. One from a guy called the Lion Whisperer. We all have heard of the Dog Whisperer. Cesar Millan gives that good show about dogs and things. And then we have the Horse Whisperer, things like that. People who've learned to communicate differently. Now we have this man from South Africa, and it's quite interesting. And then I want to play a 20-minute presentation by a woman who, it's called interactive communication with other species, which can also be related to ourselves, because how many people do you think are coming from a different planet here? We need to learn to communicate a little bit differently, and it always isn't with words in your brain. And hopefully this show will explain that. Now, I can remember, back my experience with animals. Let me give you one little example. At one point I had a parrot, and I was living on a boat, and this was over in Los Angeles when I was going to law school. And I always found it nice to live on a boat. You can live very cheaply. You don't have to live right in the heart of LA. It's like you're on the water, divorced from this stuff. And surprisingly, you can find really good, it's cheaper than living in apartments, believe it or not, these days. So anyway, I had this parrot, and I remember I was down below, and it was a Sunday, and I always had my parrot up on the back deck of my boat. Now the back was open. I opened the windows and things, and he was sitting on his cage, or she, Lizzie, was sitting on her cage. And I believe I was watching a basketball game or something, and it was unbelievable. I didn't hear anything, but something told me something was wrong. So I immediately got up, and I looked in the water, and there was Lizzie struggling for her life. Now the current was moving in my direction. So I jumped out of the boat, and luckily there was an oar sitting right there on the dock, so I came around the front of the boat, and as she was going to go underneath the dock, I scooped her up. At that particular juncture, I yelled over to a friend of mine, and luckily there was an emergency clinic only a few blocks away, so I wrapped her up, put her close to me, started to keep her warm. And the reason I did that is because she was going into hyperthermia. Parrots do not swim, and their body temperature is much warmer than ours. I think it's at 103 or 104 degrees, so they go into hypothermia a lot quicker. So I took her there, they put her in an incubator, and told me that to come back tomorrow, and hopefully she'll be okay. Now, they were saying there could be infection from swallowing the water. She could not make it, so she was in that incubator the whole night. Now, during the evening, I remember waking up and knowing she was all right. So I was happy. Now, how did I know that? I think she was telling me. I went over there, and sure enough, Lizzie was fine, and I took her home, and thus the story. But what made me get up? I'll never figure it out. I think it was that communication that she had. Somehow she could communicate to me. How is that possible? Well, we're going to delve into that. Now, as I grew up, and I'm giving you my own personal experiences, I never lost that attachment to love of horses. And during some of the business things I would get into, when I owned a small newspaper after coming back from Rome, I ended up getting horses and was pretty decent at training them. But as I was, I wasn't the same as I was as a child. I supposedly learned so much. I supposedly had now become this smart animal trainer. I know horses. And I was watching myself. And I was teaching them. I'd break them, so to speak. I didn't like that word, so I stopped using it. But I learned, and I wasn't communicating with them anymore. I was too busy trying to get them to do something that I wanted. Submit to me. And boy, most of them did. But I never had that communication level that I had that I was just talking about. And I lost that. Because guess what happened? My mind started to work this way. Oh, I need to get this horse ready for the racetrack. I need to make this horse win this race. I need to look at everything. But I failed. Because, you know what? I had forgotten. I had begun just to communicate like a human being, like people around me. Through words, make him do this, teach him how to but losing that kind of communication you can only get if you allow yourself not to make an animal submit to fear. Isn't that really exactly what your leaders do to you today? They make you submit to fear, don't they? Look at your leaders in the secular world. They make you submit through fear of terrorism. Look at the leaders in spiritual world. Much of things is through fear. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that there is a place for fear. But I don't believe that leaders should make you submit to it. The point I'm trying to make is, when we look at our animal friends, so years after I got out of that type of business with horses, I still had a few, and I decided I would just communicate with them in their own turf, so to speak. So if I had 4 or 5 horses, I just let them graze. And I found very interesting that once I got and didn't ask them to be ridden, didn't do anything, but just spent time with them, I became a part of their pack. Now, the bond would have been much stronger if I grew up with them. And for example, the little colts that I had, that I spent time this way with, the bond was so much stronger than the one I had when I just tried to make them submit to fear and to a personal goal that I had. So when I watched these animals out in the wild, I would sometimes take trips out to where all these wild Mustangs hang out and spend time with some of them. Even then spend time with some of my own horses. And what I found was that they were very smart in picking a leader. And the leader was picked in a way that was very natural. They didn't have an election. They didn't talk about it, didn't think about it, didn't do anything. But the leader would be someone that would protect and help them to live a healthier life. And that is a major difference in human beings. We somehow pick leaders that are the worst. We pick leaders, what I'm talking about are political leaders first here, that always seem to get us into war, always seem to bring out the worst sides of us. So what I'm telling you is, the way we pick them is completely wrong. That's why these elections are a farce. What are they built on? Words. Words that are always broken. Don't you have a sense that everybody running for president today, there's something wrong with them? Deep down in your heart, have you lost any communication with your heart? Sure you have. But you're still going to go out and vote, thinking that you're going to substitute the communication they give you through their lying words half the time. You pick them on the basis of who's the better of all evils here. And so what we have here is a species led by the wrong people. And there becomes the willful ignorance that people grow up in every day. There's no communication. We do not have any idea of even how to communicate with ourselves anymore. Has the love, has the feelings, has the senses that you get when you live with animals, that they teach you how to do this? We have no idea, because we have become bullies of our own planet, our own plane, if you think we live on a flat earth or a globe earth. I don't want to get into that either today. It's too polarizing. But I think if we start to take examples from some of our animal friends that we live with, we might be better off. And the reason I'm going to do this is that there are so many people out there, a few people that I'm going to feature in the next half hour, that have dealt with this subject and although you may disagree with certain things that they say, let's look at the big picture here. Can we understand that we have lost the ability to really know how to communicate anymore? And does that have anything to do with why people don't have any faith anymore? Why many people in the masses have no faith whatsoever? They're communicating on this kind of technical level that has led us into problems. And so in the next half hour, I want to feature a guy that worked with lions. I want to talk to an interactive communicator who gave a presentation on this very subject that you can listen to. And hopefully, we can understand a few things. Now, going back to that story about my parrot, there were many. I remember one time I had a really bad dental problem, and I came back from the surgery and laid down on the couch in that very same boat. This was after I helped Lizzie, and I remember I put her up. She usually would go in her cage at night, and now she was down. I had a perch down in the bottom of the boat. And I was so groggy and sick that I laid on that couch and forgot to take her off the perch. Or maybe she told me she didn't want to go. Well, I ended up waking up in the middle of the night, and guess what? She was right on top of my chest, right with her head kind of by my teeth, my cheeks. And I never said a word to her. She understood the pain I was going through. So, can we as human beings understand the pain people are going through without communicating through words? Have we lost that? I believe we have. That's why we allow the American Medical Association to run roughshod over us, giving us cures that make absolutely no sense, without even thinking, without using your brain, but saying, let my body tell me. Let my heart tell me what's right. And many people realize that the American Medical Association, the FDA, is going about this all wrong. You know it in your heart, but we've lost the ability to communicate that way. We're going to come back and listen to what these people have learned through communicating with other species. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we are back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Now, I do want to, I mentioned I was going to talk about these two individuals who are showing you that we can communicate in a different manner than just with technology and words and all of these things we do when we talk to animals, and that we could use this to better understand ourselves. Because in a sense, we're all made up of the same things. Now, the first little video, I'm only going to play a few minutes because you have to go to it and actually see this relationship with these lions that Kevin has brought. That's his first name, Kevin. And he graduated with a BS degree. He lives in South Africa. And he began his career with animal rehabilitation. He made great strides at understanding these animals by living with them, raising several lions, and communicating with them on a different basis. And when you watch this video, and I want you to go to it, and I'll give you go to lionwhisperer.co.za, and it's only about 15 minutes long. But his unique method to getting to know their individual personalities, what makes each of them angry, happy, upset, or irritated, just like a mother perhaps understand her child, has really caused people to accept him as one of the as teaching these things, as well as the lions accepting them into their own fold. And isn't that interesting? Just what he said, what was said, a mother communicating with her child sometimes communicates without words, correct? But how come we don't do that with other people? Where's the breakdown? that's what this talks about. But let me play just a little bit of this short video to get your interest to go to it and watch this 14-minute video. And he's going to talk a little bit about how he formed this relationship.
I lie down there next to them and I just think, oh, you're just so beautiful. What would I do to make you better? I can't. As a kid, I could really only remember lions in storybooks. I would always imagine, lions to be wandering the plains of Africa and, exactly where, what you do, exactly where they should be. Oh.
At this point, the lions and him are hugging each other. It's an incredible sight. That's why I'd like you to go to that video and watch it. Go pro lions, the new endangered species. And these scenes are just amazing. You're seeing two lions just acting like little pussycats. Okay, I just cut that off, but anyway, I wanted to emphasize that. And when he talked about when a species disappears from a habitat and gets into some technical things, I think we'll leave that for another time. But I did want to also, right now, go to the second presentation that I wanted to get to you today. And this one is more from a person. Her name's Anna Breitenbach, and she studies this communication breakdown, and this communication breakdown between humans and other species, as well as showing how perhaps it is a breakdown also of communication between ourselves and what we rely on, and why, like I said before, why do we usually pick the wrong leaders to lead our pack when an animal group does an amazing job? And in that short video that you should go to, Kevin talks about how he's noticed how hyenas usually pick a leader that is going to help them the most, not lead them into starvation, lead them into battle, lead them into war, like we do. But anyway, let's listen to what Anna has to say.
So why wouldn't we be able to connect and communicate with other expressions of life? We are literally of the same energy. We are cut from the same cloth. We humans, having brains as we do, tend to think a lot, too much. And every thought or feeling has an electromagnetic consequence in our brain. Synapses fire, there are brainwave emissions, and these really have a frequency that can be perceived by any other aspect of the universe that tunes into us. Much like a cell phone tower or a radio tower that's constantly emitting waves, so we too as humans are walking through our days and the world emitting these waves energetically and on a brain level. But connecting with any other being we want to is not just a matter of the mind or this lump of grey matter we call our brain. It's also a matter of the heart, the wisdom of the heart, that feeling of unconditional love, and connecting from a place of kinship and recognition. So I'll talk more about that in a moment. The good news is that other animals, non-human animals, are automatically tuned in. They're very open. We know how our cats and dogs at home just know what we're thinking. And if we're feeling sad or bad on a particular day, they might come and show us a little comfort or treat us a little differently. Unfortunately, us modern humans have lost the ability to be aware of these things naturally. And we tend to focus only on spoken word and on language, but the animals all around us are constantly sensing us, and they know things automatically. They're very good at it. It's us who needs to adjust our frequency to get on the same wavelength as them. But animals are always receiving our real thoughts and feelings, and perhaps they're even suggesting some things to us as well. If you're sitting at home and suddenly have a thought pop into your head, you might be sitting in front of the TV or at your computer, and suddenly you find yourself getting up and walking through the kitchen, outside into the yard, picking up the empty dog's water bowl and filling it with water. It doesn't mean that you suddenly had the bright idea in the middle of your workday that the dog might be thirsty. What would have happened is that your thirsty dog is emitting these feelings and messages of thirst, and eventually you manage to get it on an energetic or a telepathic level. So animals are good at this. They're doing it all the time. These photos were taken on a wild dolphin workshop a couple of years back, where completely wild dolphins in the ocean choose to come up to swimmers and interact with us. And they have learned that us humans tend to be pretty silly about things and to think of contact as meaning physical contact of some kind. Look at how many cultures, isn't there, the shaking of hands, or at the very least eye contact, is some way of making connection, because we humans think that physical contact is the only way to make connection. And what I've experienced with these dolphins is that they know they're connected energetically, but when they come close to us, they emit the air bubbles out of their blowhole that is their signature pattern. Each dolphin has a little autograph that is a certain pattern of bubbles, and when they come and greet a person for the first time, they always emit their particular autograph, as if to say, "Hi, I'm Dolly." So animals are always adjusting to come into our ways of connecting. They know it's possible to connect energetically. It's really us humans who always think about things quite so physically. Quantum theory and Einstein's relativity theory talk a lot about how this energy transference is possible, and I'm not going to go into that too much now because there's lots and lots of reading material about it. But essentially, by directing our attention to another being, we have the ability to tune in and to be on the same wavelength. There's no accident in that expression. It's not just coincidental to say be on the same wavelength as someone. It really means you're resonant. That's what attunement is all about. Our ancient ancestors knew about this very well. They didn't have to wake up in the morning and sit down in front of their fire and go into a deep meditation to try to connect with the animals. They just simply woke up and thought about the lion in Africa, or thought about the kangaroo in Australia, and would automatically get information coming into their minds spontaneously about where those animals were. People, too, when they were hunter-gatherers, used to know about the plants in these intuitive ways. They would know by direct communication with the plants which plants might be medicinal and be useful for healing and well-being, which might be toxic, or which parts of the plant might be toxic, and which might be nourishment as food. And the medicine people of the tribe and the hunters and gatherers would communicate with the plants to ask them about their properties, and they would care for the plants. Our indigenous hunter-gatherer ancestors would also communicate with the collective consciousness of a certain species of animal. So if they wanted to go hunting tomorrow, then tonight they would sit in a state of prayer or communication, perhaps with the kudu nation, and humbly, through prayer, communicate with all kudu in the area, and very respectfully request that one kudu please show its tracks the next morning so they could follow the tracks, because they really needed to feed their family for the next few months. They would always explain their need in a very humble way and never take more than they needed. And then about 12,000 years ago, we humans decided to keep animals behind fences and to grow crops and keep them also, keep more than we needed. And when we started hoarding and keeping more than we needed, we began to make them just resources for ourselves and not be in such a dynamic relationship and respectful relationship with them. There are still some indigenous cultures that carry forward these ways of honoring animals. In Nepal, there's an annual Day of the Dog where all dogs are honored. And everybody puts outside their homes water and food for the stray dogs to come and enjoy. And if the dogs come close enough, they decorate them with garlands of flowers and put turmeric on their foreheads, and really revere and honor the animals. So too, there were very close relationships between the indigenous people in Africa and the wild animals too. These days, unfortunately, when we see documentaries, they usually are pitting man against beast and trying to make some big sensational battle of the whole thing. predator and prey. But at the times before modern times, there was a dynamic relationship and a very beautiful way of being, and even physical closeness was possible. Not that you should try this at home. So what is telepathy? It is direct communication. It's direct communication. The animal might be in the same room as you. The plant might be right in front of you in your garden. It's direct communication. You're not using some distant means of doing a psychic reading. It's a direct communication, like a conversation. And the dog will know that you're speaking with them telepathically, just as you will know. It's a two-way sending and receiving of information. It's completely natural. We know how sometimes we can just tell what someone's going to say before they say it. That's telepathy. So it's not something very new agey or weird or a special gift. We're not predicting the future. We're not in some astral traveling way, zooming ourselves over to remote locations to look down and see what's happening there. If we are connecting with an animal who is somewhere else than where we are, we're actually connecting energetically and then asking them to show us where they are or how they're feeling. It's all about directing our attention and our intention. For us humans, that often means eye contact. Some animals don't like eye contact. They take it as threatening, or they think it's a game, So it doesn't have to be eye contact, but with animals who live close to people, like our domestic pets, they can often enjoy eye contact for short periods. With our eyes closed, we can still direct our intention to connect towards the one we want to connect with. Animals and plants are sentient beings. Now, sentient being means one that can think for itself and is self-aware, very much aware of itself, of its individual expression in the universe. Unfortunately, mostly science doesn't really regard animals as conscious beings, so they go through all sorts of experiments to try to prove that. Cornell University had a study with elephants who have lived in the same yard in a zoo for several years. And one day they took the elephants away and sedated them and put a cross, a white cross, on the elephant's forehead, like you can see. They also put up a big 7-meter mirror in the elephant's yard, and then they woke the elephants up. And when the elephants were no longer sleepy, they went out into their yard. And, of course, they went straight to the mirror thinking, oh, new toy, And they felt with their trunks behind the mirror. But within 90 seconds, they realized they could see their reflection in the mirror. And when they saw their reflection, the first thing the elephants did was, with their trunks, move to the cross on their own forehead and try to wipe away the mark. So this proves that they were understanding their reflection to be a two-dimensional representation of themselves and in reverse, a mirror image. They didn't first try to wipe on the mirror. They straight away realized, whoa, there's something there that shouldn't be there, and tried to wipe the mark away with their own trunks. So animals are self-aware. Every bee in a beehive is aware of its own role and its own purpose. Every tree in a forest is very aware of its family of other trees and of itself, of its own needs and its own life. So plants and animals have their own roles and purposes. Perhaps the role of all cats is to find boxes. And animals have roles and purposes that may have nothing at all to do with us humans or what they're doing in our lives. We so often are very grateful to animals for being guide dogs for the blind, or therapy animals, or horses that draw carts, or other animals that help us. But that doesn't mean their only purpose on the planet is to be in service to us humans. What made us so special? What made us so important? Perhaps we are here to serve them as well. Perhaps we're here to help each other. And different species have got different perspectives about what's important to them or about who they'd like to communicate with. We do know that cats tend to be more independent, but that doesn't mean that you might not have a kitty at home who's a very sociable herd animal who loves nothing more than to be in a big family and would love to be around other cats. We know that dogs and horses tend to like to group together and live in packs or in herds. That doesn't mean, though, that the horse or the dog in your life isn't a very independent soul who wants to live alone. We always need to remember that we're dealing with an individual, and we shouldn't be thinking about generalizations about the species or any prior knowledge. We can just simply ask the animals directly how they feel about themselves and hear straight from the horse's mouth. So another thing about animals being self-aware is that they are very able to express empathy, to feel with another being, and to have compassion as well. They can know and understand what it must be like to be feeling pain. They feel pain when a member of their family is feeling pain somewhere else. And it's not about brain size, clearly. Modern science tends to think of brain size as meaning very intelligent. Of course it's not. It's not at all. Empathy can be defined as looking through each other's eyes. For us to truly know and understand another being, we need to be able to look through their eyes, and see the world from their perspective without thinking about it. And children are very, very good at this. Children have an automatic connection with animals because they are free of lots of ideas or expectations. And animals tune in very easily to kids as well. There's this natural instinctive communication. So all the adults in the audience, be wise and listen to your children and what they're saying about the animals and the plants, because they're picking up messages directly. Particularly the younger the child is and the less language is interfered, the more direct knowing is available. Here are some brief examples of compassion and caring between the different species. It's well known the great relationship between elephants and their keepers. That's an orphaned elephant in Africa. These young elephants, if they're orphans, they die from heartbreak unless they have someone with them 24/7. The bottom picture is of an orca and a dog having a little greeting. And the tiger was in the Thailand zoo. His mother rejected him when he was born, and the only other animal who had young at the time was a pig. So they put him with the pig, and he grew up with his little piglet brothers and sisters, and now they live happily together. And he doesn't think they're food, they're his brothers and sisters. So what do we use telepathic communication for? We use it for all sorts of ways to try to understand animals better, so that we can help them meet their wishes or their needs. We can use it for helping veterinarians understand their physical symptoms or describe their physical symptoms to find out what's wrong with them or what care they need. It can help with resolving behavioral issues and various distressing things. Most importantly, though, it can enhance our relationship with them. This was a cheetah I worked with in Canada who'd broken her leg and had to be confined indoors for quite a few months. And with telepathic communication, I was able to keep her calm and help her understand why she had to go through this very terrible imprisonment, because it was for her own good. And from time to time we'd let her look out the window and see where she might be able to walk again one day, which she did. And these photos were taken in Mozambique by a young marine biologist who attended one of my workshops. And a few months later, while snorkeling in the warm ocean, he saw a whale shark that is the sea's biggest fish, just meters and meters and meters long. You'll see in a moment, relative to a human. And she had fishing line caught around her tail and a hook in her tail, which was obviously reducing her ability to swim so well. So he remembered what he'd learned about being calm and still inside and connecting with her. He explained to her what he was going to do and that he meant well, and then he swam up to her. See how large she is, that's just her tail, and he's an adult man. It was potentially very dangerous. If she had just fished her tail, she could have knocked him unconscious. But he had explained his intention, and he got a feeling of a yes from her. And this is what he wrote about it afterwards. I told the lady, meaning the shark, exactly what I was going to do. After removing the hook, I actually swam up right next to her face and showed her the hook. She calmly gave this long, paused wink. I'll never forget her expression. So it's very helpful to calm animals down if they are in distress or if a bird has fallen out of the nest. And it's not about physical expression. It's not about facial expression. It's not about interpreting behavior, because that is our minds busy trying to interpret things. It's definitely not about body language. When us humans see an animal in a certain posture or certain body language, we tend to assume certain things.
Okay, I'm going to break it off right there because we're out of time. But I think Monday I'll come back
Really
with this. I put it on there again. But anyway, I think Monday I'll come back with the rest of this because it's quite interesting to me. And I think the one point I wanted to bring up was when she talked about animals being sentient beings and having empathy, feeling pain, seeing life through the eyes of other animals or through you. And that brought to mind how little empathy many people have today. And is it because you're only looking through life through your own eyes? Thinking too much? But think about that. looking at life through the eyes of others. Wouldn't it be a greater world that we live in if everyone did that? We've lost so much. And I think it's worth going back Monday and doing some more on this because, it's all about communication. It's all about, we communicate through language, but many of our questions somehow never seem to get answered, correct? With language. Well, maybe if we tune in to our other senses, the ones that maybe our ancestors had, the ones that animals use, we'll find some answers. Find answers through our heart. We'll find answers without having to say a word. And those, to me, may be more important than the answers you're going to get from any one of your leaders that may skirt the issues. Oh, we are a species that has learned every loophole possible to argue every issue from all sides. But deep down inside, I think we know what's right. We've just lost the ability to communicate that with others. We'll be back Monday on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.